The Niagara River, joining Lake Ontario and the western Great Lakes, has served as an important harbor and military base of operations since the colonial period. With the increase in military and commercial traffic precipitated by the American Revolution, the need for a navigational aid at the river's mouth became evident. Eventually, 4 lights, including one on the Canadian shore, would be erected at or near Fort Niagara.
Well, probably the most famous shipwreck that involved Fort Niagara was the sinking of the HMS Ontario in 1780. And that happened further east from here, but it was taking really a number of personnel from Fort Niagara over to the eastern end of the lake, including the fort's commandant, Colonel Mason Bolton, and it got caught in a storm and it went down fairly quickly. And it was lost for well over 2 centuries, and a few years ago it was located, the shipwreck. But that's the most, I think, the most famous shipwreck story connected to the fort.
The first Fort Niagara Light was established on the roof of the fort or castle in 1781 or 1782. This light is considered to be the first unofficial navigational lighthouse on the Great Lakes. It was in use until around 1803 and was removed by 1805. The federal government re-established the light atop the French castle of Fort Niagara in 1823. With the completion of the Erie Canal in 1825, Niagara River commerce decreased considerably, and the port at Niagara lost much of its importance. The ports of the lower river retained some local trade, however, and so a light was still considered necessary. By the 1860s, the location of the light was becoming inconvenient and inefficient. Military officers living in the French castle complained that the lighthouse keeper had to walk through the building carrying oil for his lamp. The existing stone light went into service in 1872. The Fresnel lens was moved from the castle to the top of the new tower. In 1900, the tower was raised 11 feet in order to increase its visibility, so that the light could be seen from 25 miles out on Lake Ontario. The light was eventually electrified and maintained as an automated beacon by the Coast Guard. In 1993, the light was decommissioned, and the Fresnel lens was removed for safekeeping in 1995. The lens can be seen at the Fort Niagara Visitor Center. Old Fort Niagara, within Fort Niagara State Park, is a National Historic Landmark. Built by the French in 1726 to monitor the fur trade out of the Great Lakes Basin, it was lost to the British during the French and Indian War and stayed in British hands during the American Revolution. After the war, the fort was turned over to the United States, which held the fort until 1813. During the War of 1812, the British launched a surprise night attack on the fort and captured it in about half an hour. The fort was restored to the U.S. in 1815. Today, Old Fort Niagara is a museum and historic site that showcases the evolution of a fortress over a period of a couple of hundred years. The fort contains the most complete collection of 18th century military architecture in the country, along with unique examples of military engineering and important archaeological resources. Old Fort Niagara holds several annual historic events during the summer. The fort is open year-round.
The scenery here is terrific. You can look out onto that lake and you can put yourself back a couple of centuries and think about, what it must have been like. Especially even in the winter time, you get that sense of isolation that a soldier here must have felt when they were posted here, when they were unlucky enough to be left here over the winter. People do enjoy getting to go up in the tower because it's a panoramic view of the river and the lake and, of course, the fort. You can look down into the fort from there.
Now available on DVD or Blu-ray, the WPBS TV production of New York's Seaway Lighthouses, featuring the fascinating histories of over 20 different lighthouses along the shores of New York's Seaway Trail. Order your copy today.
New York Seaway Lighthouses is sponsored by the Department of the Interior National Park Service and by Taste New York at the North Country Welcome Center overlooking the Thousand Islands Bridge.